The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
Welcome from the General Assembly in the City of Richmond. I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports and Cox Communications. We're pleased to have as a special guest today Delegate Vivian Watts. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. Good to see you.
So tell us how things are faring so far in the 2014 session of the Virginia General Assembly, at least in the House of Delegates.
As always, it's very intense. Even though this is our quote-unquote long session, it's only 2 months, which is one of the shortest sessions in the nation, so that we get down to work immediately. A lot of pre-filed bills, taking serious action in committee already, particularly on the House side where most of the bills will originate. The Senate will get the load after crossover.
Now, tell us about the reaction to the new administration. You Democrats swept the 3 statewide offices. We have a new governor, a new attorney general, and a new lieutenant governor.
And in that sweep, I think it's very fair to interpret that what the voters were looking for was good, solid, middle-class Virginia traditions of also working together, so that the administration is getting extremely high marks for some of its appointments, particularly in education and Holton. She's done so much serving on the Juvenile Domestic Relations Court, long time involvement with education, and really knows the classroom level, the family level of the challenges in providing and having a good, strong public education system. Bill Hazel in all of the health care areas. He started out 4 years from the moment that he was nominated working on health care reform. He wasn't looking at what the federal government was doing. He was looking at what we needed to do in Virginia.
And of course, he's a holdover from the previous administration.
He's a holdover from the previous administration. The relationships, the integrity, the knowledge base that he brings with is our best hope for expanding our health care services that we desperately need to do in Virginia. I mean, we're 48th, 49th in the nation in our Medicaid spending. Almost 500,000 people uninsured, falling through the gap, working poor. But again, Secretary Hazel, as a holdover, has a strong knowledge base and a network. Then finally, must mention Secretary of Finance, Rick Brown, who has served the Commonwealth for 43 years. He came up through the ranks. He's a total professional. And this is something that's so important to Virginia's rank as being fiscally a very well-managed state, that you don't try to fudge the numbers. You don't say, what do you want the numbers to be? You give an honest answer to budget committees, to the governor, about exactly what the economic climate is that we're facing. And certainly in Virginia, that is one of our challenges right now, with such heavy involvement of the federal government, both in the military as well as contractors, and what is happening as far as balancing the federal budget and sequestration, how that will affect Virginia's economy. We need to be careful as we move forward.
Now, we've got 2 new members from the Tidewater area. I think the new Secretary of Transportation, and it's Aubrey Lane, I believe, is his name. And then Admiral Harvey, I believe.
Yes. Admiral Harvey is a wonderful appointment, again, because here we have a, I believe I'm accurate, 4-star retired general. He knows the military's concerns. So when we talk about the effect on Virginia's economy of federal decisions, the BRAC base closings, cutting back on some of the military presence, he is going to be our most effective negotiator, spokesman, knowing exactly what he needs to address to get the best possible decision.
Now, you're fortunate to represent constituents in District 39, I believe. Tell us how your district has fared economically over the last few years.
Well, oddly enough, while my district is wholly within Fairfax County, the image that people have of Fairfax County, if you looked at my district, it's quite a different image. 40% of my school children are entitled to free and reduced lunch.
40%?
40%.
Low income.
Low income. Very low income when you realize that the measure of low income is nationally set, does not reflect cost of living. So we have a lot of working parents who are really struggling. And so programs that help these children who don't come from homes, even in our area, of course, that have any computer access, so that as we move into the technology and so much more of our educational program, both in education in technology, but as well as in delivering education, my children need additional resources. Now, obviously, I have some schools that are in a much more robust situation, but that means I've got other schools where 60–70% of the children are entitled to free and reduced lunch.
Wow, that's a wide swing there, no question about it. Now, what about the talk about reforming the standards of learning? I assume that you've heard that at the local level, and it's an issue here.
I've heard that at the local level almost from the get-go with the standards of learning, in part because the standards of learning, and I was in the General Assembly at the time, I'm going to use the phrase, were just plopped down. They didn't have the kind of robust field testing that you ought to have to make sure of what you were measuring and where you had anomalies in the test that was producing problem areas and not really reflective of the level of learning. But then, of course, beyond that, what we have seen in Virginia having one of the most demanding number of tests at grade level after grade level, that parents, retired teachers, teachers just think I'm teaching to the test. You may know the dates of the Civil War or when we went to the moon, but you don't know why. You don't know what was involved in the commitment that led to some of these historic events. And yet I heard one member on the floor back when we were debating them make the statement that don't forget history is 100% memorization. We learn from history. And we must learn all of the components that went into certain historical events that brought us to certain points of progress or conflict so that we can better structure current decisions. That's the frustration of the parents. They want more genuine learning and less rote memory.
You know what's interesting? I think there's only one member that I know of the General Assembly who is young enough, Delegate Joseph Yost, to have actually taken an SOL.
Ah, all right. Well, I know at one time Arlington Senator Mary Margaret Whipple was going to have all the members take an SOL just so that they could see that is what you're being required to answer fully relevant? And again, this is where the field testing is. I'm not advocating that you do away with testing, but the over-reliance on testing and the nature of the test are critical elements that must be addressed to provide the kind of educational program that is going to really suit people for the decades to come as they go out and are productive in the world's economy, in all of the major changes that we see because of our ever-expanding scientific knowledge and communication.
What about the needs of teachers at K through 12? Because I noticed that the governor has indicated a commitment of an additional $3 million, I believe, specifically to assist Northern Virginia schools in attracting and maintaining good teachers.
There's a factor called cost of competing, basically cost of living. When a state trooper is assigned to Northern Virginia, he gets a 24.6 salary increase just because of the cost of living in Northern Virginia. So that way back when, this cost of competing factor was put into the school funding formula. Now, as it goes through our ability to pay, which is the full formula, in actuality, if it were fully funded, which it hasn't been for several years now, we would only get about a 2% differential. Not a 20% differential, not a 24%, 2% differential, and that has been severely undercut in the last several years. And what it does, it means that hiring quality teachers, supporting them so that they can live in the area, live in their community, is essential to having a quality workforce within Northern Virginia. And again, speaking to Fairfax in particular, I have not seen an update of the study, but in 2002, Fairfax County had the highest number of school kids per grade level, per classroom, kids per classroom, from kindergarten all the way through seniors, all than about 20 other school divisions in the state. And so when you put those working conditions in there, large class sizes, and then you put in the challenges of a district like mine, where you've got 60, 50, 70% of your kids entitled to free and reduced lunch without the resources at home to back up the educational program, you have challenges and you need quality teachers to meet those challenges.
Now, how does that issue differ, if at all, from the local composite index?
The local composite index is how you measure ability to pay. And it's driven 50% by the adjusted gross income of any jurisdiction. Now, the problem with that is that Fairfax County is like any other rural county. We don't have an expanded tax base. The cities can raise cigarette tax, they have hotel taxes, etc., meal taxes, but for Fairfax County, we're like any rural county. So while that ability to pay, the LCI, Local Composite Index, is driven 50% by adjusted gross income, we can't tax adjusted gross income. Also in my district, I have people who've lived in their home 60, 70 years even, who the value of that home, little red brick bungalow, is nowhere matched their now limited income. So the pressure on the real estate tax as our main source of funding is something that, it's one thing when we were all young, and basically we just moved into our house and our income and the value of the house was more in line. Now it isn't, and it produces severe pressure both on the residents as well as the resources available for the schools.
And of course that was all exacerbated by the recession.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
So to what extent has that had a negative impact on funding the local school districts, the community colleges, and our institutions of higher learning? Now, those are primarily state-funded matters, but at least at the local level, those public schools may have suffered.
The state level, about 2/3 of our budget comes from the individual income tax. So we were hurt with the recession because of that, but it is bounding back, and it's particularly bounding back in those people who've invested in the stock market. You have significant growth in what's called non-withholding income tax, not the payroll of the folks that are working 9 to 5. So the state is rebounding somewhat better, has that income base, whereas a county, limited as we are essentially to the real estate tax, I believe Fairfax County's budget now about 60% of it goes to school funding, and of that, less than 15% comes from the state, whereas in other areas of the state, as far as local schools, 80% comes from the state. So a lot of pressure on a very limited tax base.
And to compound that, I think the Virginia retirement system requires local school districts to contribute to the retirement fund for teachers.
Absolutely, and then now we're getting a little bit into the weeds, but that's what we're down here for, is to try to appropriately respond to new federal level regulations are coming out regarding the soundness of your investments to back up your pension programs. And the significant changes, which I won't go into, but they are very significant, are basically putting the spotlight on the long-standing problem that the employees, state employees, teachers, local employees, have always made their contribution to the pension fund because it's taken out of their paycheck, but too often the budget decisions coming out of the state have been the actuarial recommendation may be at this level, and what we've actually funded has been only 60%, 70% of what would be required by the projections of what we need to cover. So basically this rule, and
I think there are accounting standards, new accounting standards.
The new accounting standards coming. If we don't conform with that, not only do we have problems within the pension system, but if we don't conform with that, one of the reasons for the new accounting standards is so that the bond rating of localities and states can be compared apples to apples instead of all of this different assumptions about return that backs on investment that backs up your pension system. So if we don't conform to the new accounting standards, we run the risk of jeopardizing that very valuable AAA bond rating.
Exactly, exactly. Now, the K through 12 schools in your district are doing well, though, and your junior colleges. Talk to us about the importance of the junior colleges in your district and throughout the state.
Well, incredibly important. And the reason why I was half smiling is that if I'm talking directly to my constituents who live around the Annandale campus of the community college, it's a mixed blessing because the incredible growth that we have seen during the economic downturn of enrollment in our community colleges as people up their skill level and better get suited to get out into the workforce has caused incredible growth and therefore very problematic parking problems throughout my district, and I represent the entire campus. But now turning to the positive, as I will be dealing with that specific problem, the positive is I've always been a champion of the community colleges, again, particularly because there are so many areas where specific skills, particularly also in healthcare, are what are needed out there in the marketplace, not necessarily the four-year degree, although it is that stepping stone. And Virginia's policy, very enlightened to work to have a seamless transition between the community colleges and four-year institutions so that you focus those courses that you take, and that is a tremendous cost savings because you can live at home, you can take the first 2 years on a community college basis at a much lower tuition, making four-year college degree affordable. And of course the 2+2 program helps local residents in that regard too. Now we've had a lot of adults who have lost their jobs over the last few years, and the community colleges also provide a service there in terms of
updating their work skills and transitioning them hopefully into new jobs.
And working with the veterans community,
Yes.
Extremely important in job skills, both specific skills as well as there's been a responsiveness, I know, in my area to any programs that come forward from Veteran Services as far as workplace reentry and all of that specific guidance. Again, this is what the beauty of the community college is it's next to the people's needs.
Now, I know there's been a great emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and math, but there's also a move to emphasize a little bit more, at least something else, in terms of kids right out of high school learning a trade or a skill for jobs of the future that are going to pay very well.
The Virginia Manufacturers Association, I was talking with them early on in this session, and it's interesting that while manufacturing jobs have gone down throughout the Commonwealth over the last 10, 15 years, we're now at the point where there's been enough retirements that we really need to rebuild our workforce. And rebuilding our workforce is right on point with these kind of specific skills programs where you're directing people towards the skills that make you employable from the educational program directly into the marketplace rather than on-the-job heavy skills training, that cooperative private-public partnerships in providing the appropriate skills. But the Manufacturers Association are now coming out very, very strongly towards needing to rebuild their workforce. Again, that's the way you attract new economic growth. I mean, as the governor has so well and so enthusiastically and from good experience talked about promoting, these are things that helps him promote Virginia. It's not just that Virginia has typically been regarded as the best place to do business, and now that we've dealt with ongoing transportation funding, well, hopefully we can maintain that position, but the position is made up of a number of things, and one of those things is having a trained, educated workforce, but it also, there's nothing in government, the years that I've been at it, that isn't somehow related to everything else in government, so that healthcare expansion becomes an extremely important part of that attracting employers, because if we have hospitals closing in the rural areas of Virginia because they aren't getting the funding they need through having insured patients coming in now that they don't get extra payments for the uninsured. And there's a real, we've already lost one hospital, a number of other hospitals their margin is less than 1.5%. They really are under pressure, and if we lose hospitals, then you can't attract an employer to come into an area where there's not basic hospital services. So all of these things are all part of growing the economy, growing jobs.
So the need to diversify the economy, as the new governor has indicated, is critical, because we do have a heavy reliance in the Commonwealth on military installations and the federal government in terms of federal agencies as well as federal contractors.
Absolutely, per person, number one in the nation. But behind that, though, Virginia has always been blessed to have a lot of diversity in its economy. Again, strong agriculture, maritime, mining, as well as, of course, all of the IT presence that grew in Northern Virginia to be one of the most robust in the nation, starting with the fact that we had the advantage of broadband because of the Pentagon before anybody else did. And the important thing is to keep that advantageous position and not lose it because of congestion on the roads.
And by the way, congestion on the roads is a fact of life, but congratulations to you and other members of the General Assembly, the former governor, in getting that transportation bill passed, because I know that's something that's sorely needed here, and you should be proud of that.
I am very proud of it. I just received a award where the plaque read, for never, never, never giving up. So the three nevers I cherish that phraseology because I have worked for years and years and years to try as accurately as possible to present the statistics, present the funding challenges, present the realities of quick fix and band-aids that were just moving monies from one pot to the other, but not making the investment in our infrastructure, ongoing investment that is critical. And so last year to be able to play a significant role, to be trusted at the table as an honest broker on the ramifications of some of the decisions we made. And the package, while of course it's not perfect, but the package is a very robust package because it deals with the congestion factors in the urban crescent, and it brings some of these transportation decisions, transit as well as road capacity, closer to local governments with the regional control of money that is raised in Northern Virginia, stays in Northern Virginia, aligning it much better with some of the land use decisions that are made rather than waiting 20 years for VDOT to finally accumulate enough money to address the problem. Statewide, the depth of our needs we still are absolutely a equal partner with all other jurisdictions as far as state funding, but this allows us to go above and beyond with money raised in our own area.
Great. Unfortunately, mental health is back in the news. One of your colleagues in the Senate suffered a tragedy recently, and I know that's an issue you've been involved in for some time, so why don't you tell us where that stands and what's likely to happen?
I've been involved in it for a long, long time. I won't take too long, but I started out in college to major in psychology, and while I only had 30 hours because of the research on depth perception in chickens wasn't where I was going, I fortunately had a very strong background in physiology, which means how does the brain work? How do the nerves connect with each other, the chemistry of the brain? So my understanding, particularly I spent 7 years directing the Fairfax CASA program, which deals with the most severe cases of child abuse, neglect, where the post-traumatic stress disorder is very, very real, as it is for our returning veterans. My understanding of these issues, my deep caring and involvement of the individuals, and the reality, if there's anything that can come out of some of the tragedies of our returning veterans, it will be perhaps an understanding that mental health is something that everybody's physiology, everyone's physical makeup makes you prone to certain times when the brain functions aren't what you think you can control. But instead, you have much to deal with, as we saw in the tragedy with Senator Dees and his son, where there were certain triggers that were not met. And that becomes the challenge, because while I was extremely active on the reform of our commitment laws and the oversight following the Virginia Tech incredible tragedy and loss of life, I was saying at the time, all of this looks good on paper, but unless we fund the services, unless we fund the professionals that are involved in the oversight of the person's behavior pattern and needs, they're meaningless. And unfortunately, while we've put more money in it, we also, what money was originally went in after tech, only about half of it actually stayed in the system. And so we're only ready back to about where we were in the funding, and there's so much more to be done. I'm working closely with public safety as far as we deinstitutionalize, more and more people are on the streets.
Great. We're going to have to end it there, but we're so happy you were with us. Delegate Vivian Watts, good to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Cox Communications. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans.